first of all, before I ask our NU student to formally introduce you, I thought I'd welcome you on behalf of the university of NIIT. My co-founder Vijay Thadani is here with me. Hi. So
Hi.
for everybody's benefit, a good friend of mine who's very active in the NASSCOM communities, Atul Batra, he knows about this program. So I was telling him I need someone who can address this whole question of product market fit. Elusive idea, but a very powerful idea. And he instantly gave the name of Kaustubh. So we briefly chatted, and it's kind of you to have agreed to find some time. So Kaustubh has helped many startups. I think he runs that as a practice to help people go through this very crucial phase. So in a sense, this is a kind of we are calling it a masterclass. That's what we are calling it. So we have about an hour. We'll start a formal introduction, but I just personally wanted to thank you for taking the time and for joining us. Yeah, please do.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Go ahead.
Mr. Kaustubh Patekar is the visionary founder of ProdZen. Today, he'll be sharing his insights on product thinking, finding product market fit. With a track record of transforming over 20 product startups, Kaustubh's expertise in product management, design thinking, and scaling businesses is truly commendable. His academic records, credentials from MIT and IIT Bombay further highlights his depth of knowledge in this field. Thank you for joining here. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the intro. I hope I can live up to the high expectations that you are setting. And more than my educational background, I think what I hope to share is things I have learned through practice, through my own experiments in product building, which I've been doing for a long time for other companies, and one successful, one not so successful product startups of my own. And in the last 5-6 years, working with companies and venture funds to see how we can understand the process and see if we can help companies scale. So hopefully you find that interesting. And, throughout this session, I will ask you a couple of questions. I know it's kind of tricky because you're all sitting in the room. So if you are a startup founder, please raise your hand when I ask the questions. We'll at least do an informal count. And outside of that, we'll definitely leave time for questions. If something is not clear, it's urgent, I'll take a couple of interruptions, but otherwise I'll request you to hold the questions to the end. Yeah. Okay. So let me start by sharing. Can you all see the screen projected at your end?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, like Pawar mentioned, certainly, product market fit is a very interesting concept. And it's definitely elusive for some companies. Some companies, on rare occasions find it easily, but for most, it's actually a process. And sometimes you may have a startup which has run for a while, but still, may have early revenue, but may not have product market fit. So hopefully in this session, we can, kind of take it apart and talk about what it means, why it's important, and hopefully answer some of your questions as well. I know that there are, I think, 10 plus founders in this room, all at various stages. So I think Professor Vikas had shared some of the names. So we took a brief look. I won't claim that we've studied it, but we got some sense of where different companies are. And so we will try to make it as interesting and relevant as possible. Yeah. So this is our agenda for today. What is it? Why it's important? And in general, why do startups fail? Where potentially things can go wrong? And more importantly, how do you actually address it? How do you prevent that from happening? So we'll try to break it down a little bit. And towards the end, we'll talk about two things. One is, how do you know whether you've hit product market fit, or what can be considered product market fit? So a couple of thoughts on, how you measure and how you assess. And in the end, hopefully some interesting thoughts on, what it takes to get there. Right? So I won't go over this again since you appreciate, already introduced. But, like I said, all this, what I'm going to share is based on experience. It's, not from my education at all, but from actually fighting it out in the trenches. So, we'll start with a simple graphic, and perhaps a sort of high-level definition of what this is, right? It's essentially a scenario in which, your customers are buying. And not only are they buying, they are also using, right? So a lot of times companies buy products or services, but they don't actually use it or utilize it. So the second part is also important. Not enough that people are buying, they're also buying and they're using. And the last part, which is often a high bar, is that they are actually telling others about it. And if you can get there, which means the word of mouth and referrals is spreading, which means you have a high likelihood of growing much, much faster, right? And that can lead to not just sustainable growth, but also profitable growth, because you don't need to do as much as what you need to do initially to get your product out in the market and actually make it successful, right? For those of you who are running startups, if you could quickly, perhaps through a show of hands, let me see how I can see it. Maybe someone in the room can do a count for me. How many of you?
14? 14. All the people who are at the high table, let's say. And then we have some faculty and students who are
barring a couple who are at the edge of the wall.
That's not the high table, that's the
Okay.
wrong end of the table.
No worries. How many of you actually who are running the startups
just raise your hands.
would say that you have a product market fit? Okay, I don't think I can see from the small.
So I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands.
Okay, so 5 of you already have product market fit. So, I think the other 9 who don't have product market fit, just ask these people. You will have the answer.
What is product market fit?
How about those who, who think they don't have it, or anybody thinks maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Why do you think it's maybe and neither a yes nor a no?
Because it's a B2B model, so some are asking for it. The others are taking time evaluating it.
Okay. So people are not picking your product as fast as you would like them to, right? There is a evaluation process. Okay, that's good. What about anyone who is saying no, they don't have product market fit? Why do you think you don't have product market fit?
I think I would be in the maybe category. There are enough people buying the product, but maybe I haven't found the right go-to-market channels to do it profitably yet.
Okay.
So
That's good. Yeah. Very good observation. Yes, please.
I also think product market fit feels like a flow, like there is a consistent flow and which keeps gradually increasing, which doesn't seem, while there are enough users on with whatever we are building, it doesn't seem like a flow. It doesn't seem I've heard this, that if you have product market fit, it'll feel like it's an emotion. You will be able to feel it very strongly. And I haven't been able to feel it yet. So that's why I think
I would agree. So actually, if I go back a couple of years and again think about a time where there was more demand than what we could cater. And hence, I think the statement and mindset has changed, that maybe we should go back and ask the fundamental question, do we have PMF?
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you all for adding. And, I think someone said it's like a flow or an emotion, right? So if you read some of the literature on product market fit, people will equate it to the feeling of being in love. You can't describe it, but you know it when you have it. But, love is unpredictable. Hopefully we can have a scientific process for describing how you get to product market fit. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate all of you responding. So, one of the key things, and, some of you already highlighted this, sustainability, growth and scale, right? Somebody said, hey, at some stage we had orders and we didn't know how to fill it, right? We were just not able to fill it fast enough. And now that momentum has slowed down. So growth and scale, if you have product market fit, growth and scale is almost as easy as pumping in more money, right? You pump a little bit more money and you get more, and sometimes you don't even have to pump as much money. Definitely your customers are satisfied, right? Because if your customers are not satisfied, one, they would be leaving, and perhaps negative reputation about you would also spread, which would lead to churn. So definitely, always there will be some customers who will leave, but by and large, companies who have hit product market fit and have momentum will not have many customers leaving, typically, unless they are sort of time bounded. Like if you're helping them prepare something and then they're gone, but in general, new customers are coming fast enough. And I think somebody also talked about the idea that, it's people are taking their time to evaluate, right? That means it's not that necessarily, the fact that they're evaluating or considering you means, clearly you have something of value to offer them, but they are taking their own sweet time, which means they're not easily convinced, or it is going to take more to convince them. So of course, when they are convinced, your sales and marketing process is easier and fast, right? Because like we said earlier, also one of the last things, the third thing is that people are telling other people about it, right? So these are the reasons why, certainly product market fit is important. And I think, almost all of you seem to already know and understand this. One more reason to consider why this is important is associated with funding, right? So I will request one more raise of hands. How many of you are currently either bootstrapped or angel funded?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, so a big chunk. So 9 are bootstrapped or angel funded. How many of you are seed funded? Okay, 1,
2, 3,
Only one.
You can choose one here. You only get one thing. How many?
Okay.
Multiple. One.
1. Okay, and how many of you are series A funded?
None.
None. How many of you want to get to series A?
What is the definition of Series A?
Excellent. So, series A is the kind of funding you will get when you are looking to scale, right? So you already proven that your product is wanted. Obviously, typically it will be a bigger check. In India, it will be typically anywhere from 1 to 10 million. If you are a B2C play, it could be even bigger, right? So one, it's a bigger check. Second, it's a growth fund, right? Whereas your initial seed funding or angel funding is more about, actually finding the fit. Is about, hey, do you actually have a proven market? Do you have a proven product? Can you actually serve it? Whereas an A and higher series is more about growth, right? BC would typically come from growth in other markets or additional offerings and so on. And, the nomenclature is straightforward. Seed funded or angel funded, could be friends and family also. So you got some money together to put it. And, the same is true for bootstrap. So you believe in something, you think it's going to be useful, you start building it out. That's where, sort of level 1 is. Seed funding is saying that, hey, can you actually take it out, mature the product, sell it, show that you can get a few customers. And once you establish that, potential investors will look at it, hey, if I pump more money into this, is it like close to a sure thing? In startups, obviously, there is nothing like a sure thing, but is it closer to a sure thing? So if I pump in more money, will I get 10x return in the next 3-4 years, right? So that's a measure. Again, it's not a standard formula. Every investor and every space will be a little bit different. But the idea is that, now giving you more money, since you already figured out the right product and the right customer to go to, you will be able to multiply it much faster, right? So, one thing is that why potentially investors look at it is because, if you got into this stage, then you have validation. Right? Validation means clearly your product is useful, people are finding value in it, and you also know what kind of customers you are going to, and they want it and they buy, right? Scalability, which is the part I just talked about, right? If I put in more money, I hire more people, I build better product, I, spend more on GTM, I will be able to scale, right? That's the second part. And of course, the third part, which is very important from investors, they don't want to lose their money, right? So if this seems like, close to a sure thing, where pumping in more money will allow you to get more customers, then your revenue is going to grow. So these are typically sort of three things most investors who come in at this stage will look at. And that's why also, another way they will ask this question is, do you have product market fit, right? So that's also another reason why this becomes important, in addition to, of course, sustainable growth, profitability, which, all of you talked about. And I'm assuming that, most, if not all of you want to get to Series A, right? Especially if you've already been raising, I'm sure there must be some of you who want to stay non-funded, but many of you may actually want to get to this. So that also becomes an important metric or measure of, why you should actually work on getting to product. Yeah. So I think you may have heard this and seen this many a times already, that a lot of startups fail. So, of course, your bravery in founding a startup is to be acknowledged here, that you actually started, right? And you'll come across some statistic like this all the time. And most people talk about it, right? But not many times that is dissected or analyzed as to why that happens, right? One way to look at it is, there are two things which a startup is doing, right? One is they are trying to show or prove that what they are offering to their customers has value. That is your product, service, overall offering. Is this something of value to people? And by people, I mean, individual users or businesses or, whoever your customers are. So are you offering something of value? This needs to be proven. This cannot be just based on what you think. This is where the market tells you, your potential customers tell you that what you are offering is of value, right? That's your first part, value hypothesis. Means you start with the hypothesis and then you prove it when what you are offering meets the market. The second part, and I think one of you talked about it, is growth and the sustainable growth, which is the growth hypothesis, right? So maybe I can get 5 customers, but can I get to 50, 500 or 5,000, depending on the kind of customers I'm looking at, right? Whether it's consumers, then I need tens of thousands or lakhs of them. If it's businesses, then I need at least tens and hundreds, if not thousands, right, to buy my product or service. So both things are important. Right? Sometimes people will have one, that means they have a solution or a product which people want, potential customers want it, but they don't have a clear path to growth. It could be because, the market is not big enough, or it could be because there isn't a predictable and sustainable way to reach that market. Every sale you have to essentially fight for and is long. So that will slow down your growth, right? You won't get the rapid growth. So that's the other part, right? And the idea is that when you have product market fit, you've essentially proven both your value hypothesis and your growth hypothesis. And that's why it helps to look at it as two separate things, right? I mean, it's not like, it's necessarily stage one after the other. Sometimes you can have some oscillations, right? So someone talked about the idea that initially we had customers who were signing up very fast, and then after a while it slowed. And now we are questioning whether we have product market fit, right? So sometimes you may have initial momentum, but that may not translate into sustainable long-term growth. So these are a couple of ways to look at it. And, many of you would already be familiar with this idea, which is, what is the meaning of value, right? So first and foremost, does anybody care, right? Are you even getting any conversations? The most important thing is anybody paying, right? Because, a lot of people may say they are interested, but if they don't pay, then you don't really have a market. This is sort of the high level hypothesis, right? Does anybody care, and is anybody willing to pay? And usually people will pay when it's a problem or a pain that they care about, right? That they agree that, hey, I need to spend money on this now, right? So one of the things you can think of, analyzing it as, is it urgent and is it important, right? So if I have some pain or a problem, some problems I will live with for a long time. Like those are nice to have. They're not must have. I don't need to spend money on them, right? Suppose you are at home and you have a small leak happening. You may say that, okay, maybe I'll wait a couple of weeks. I'm busy right now. I have to go travel for work. I'll skip it. If that tap flood opens and your house is getting flooded, you will not wait. You will instantly call the plumber or plug it or do something to fix it. That's urgent, right? So a lot of times, people identify good problems. They are important problems, but sometimes they may not be urgent. So people don't need it, not right now. At least that customer doesn't need it right, right? So that can be another way to look at it. And these are like at a broad high level. There can be narrower hypotheses, right? Like, should I be selling to customers in a metro? Should I be selling to customers in smaller towns? Should I be selling in India? Should I be selling outside? Should I be selling to people who are getting started in their career? Should I be selling to people who are already working, right? So these are all your segment questions. And sometimes they, similar questions may be for, should I offer level A product or level B product? Should I offer this feature? Should I offer that feature, right? So there can be high level questions or hypotheses to ask and test, and there can be narrower specific, questions to ask and test. But that's the approach, right? So that's your value hypothesis. And lot of times, and in general, entrepreneurs have good intuition, right? That, hey, something I'm building, something I'm working on is going to be of value. But you don't always know that in advance, right? You may have a gut feel, you may have a sense. It may depend on your understanding of the market, your understanding of the way the world is operating, your interactions with specific customers, and so on. But in a way, you don't know for sure until you actually go out in the market and test it, right? And the only way to do it is to actually go out there. And if you look at the loop on the right, you see, one is at the bottom, it's a learning mindset. Right? It's the idea that, I don't know in advance. I don't know for sure whether people want my product. I don't know for sure whether they will buy it. I don't know whether they will immediately spend it. How much will they spend? These are all potential questions, right? Also, they don't, you may not already know in advance, what kind of capabilities they need, what kind of experience they need, what kind of models they need for this product to be of use and value to them. So one way to think of it is to think of it as a learning loop, right? You are kind of, similar to a scientific experiment process, right? You do something, you see if you get the results you want. If not, you change something, right? So that same thought process applies to, essentially testing and validating in the market, whether somebody wants your product or not. If they don't want this product, do they want something else? If they don't like these capabilities, are there other capabilities that they may be interested in, right? So on and so forth. So that's the idea of talking about the value hypothesis. And the key thing is to look at it as a kind of learning model, right? Like where you are doing something, you're seeing if it works. If it works, then you perhaps do more of it, see if that continues to work. If not, then you change something. Either you change the experience, but perhaps in some cases, you may have to change the value proposition. In some cases, you may change feature function. And this is not necessarily a comprehensive list, but the idea is that you are changing something. Like if something is not working, then you're looking at changing it. If that's working, then you do more of it. And if you look at this initial portion as a learning loop, then the idea will be much easier, right? That you are checking. You're all the time checking and validating. Once you see this, and sometimes, like someone talked about, sometimes this may change because the market has evolved, right? What people wanted 5 years ago is not the same thing as what they want today. 2 years ago, or even 18 months ago, there were no AI bots available. They were, but they were very rudimentary. Now AI bots can do what may seem like magic, right? So sometimes it could be technology trends, sometimes it could be market trends, sometimes it could be regulation. The world is always changing, right? So sometimes you may hit a sweet spot and then things may change on you. So until you get to that momentum, it makes sense to keep checking and seeing if it applies. So that's one way to look at it. Within this also, there are sort of details, and I will share the slides with you. I'm not going to walk through each and every line here, but the idea is that broadly you are, important and urgent. Whatever problem you are solving for the customer, is it important and urgent? That's your test, right? Sometimes if you talk to investors, they will call it the headache pill versus vitamin pill test, right? So if you have a stabbing headache, you have no choice but to reach out for some medicine, right? You will go out. If you don't have headache medicine at home, you will go out and get it from the pharmacy, or you will dunzo it, or whatever. But you will act on it urgently, right? Similar to the leaking tap versus your kitchen getting flooded situation. Right? Like you will not stop. So is what you're offering, a headache pill, or is it what you're offering a vitamin pill? Not the actual pill, but what does your customer consider, right? Does your customer consider this like a headache pill? Like I just need it, right? This pain problem is so bad, I must treat it. Or do they consider it nice to? And sometimes good products may have a timing issue, right? So this is a good product. Right now it's nice to have. Something changes and it becomes a must, right? In addition to that, of course, validating the problem, is this the right solution? What is the amount of value it's delivering to the customer? And of course, many of you, since you're already at a stage where you have customers and some of you are already at a PMF level and some, trying to get there, you would have used many of these techniques, right? Actually talking to people, surveys, testing of prototypes, monitoring, people using your product, even if they're buying, are they using it? Right? What kind of feedback are you getting? And almost all of you would have built an early version or an MVP or a lighter version of the product before you actually build the full scale, right? So these are all kind of feeding into it. But the key thing which often becomes difficult when you are building it out is, which of these are assumptions versus which of this is proven, right? That's often difficult to tell, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're already in a way operating in the future, right? You visualize, hey, this is where it's going to be. So sometimes it's difficult to tell what you are projecting versus what is reality. And following a systematic approach can help you uncover. Now, that was the value hypothesis. Similarly, we also talked about the growth hypothesis. Can you grow big enough? Can you grow fast enough to larger numbers? And one way to look at it is, is there a large enough segment of customers that will pay for your solution? Right? So, some of you would have done a, target, TAM, SAM, SOM kind of analysis, total available market, addressable market, serviceable available market, and so on. So one part is that, and the other is actually the segment. Are there actually a set of people who want your solution and are willing to pay for it? And I think, like someone talked at the beginning, do you actually have the right channel? How do you actually push your product out to customers? Do they find it on the web? Do you have to call people? Do you have to promote it at events? Do you have to go through schools? Do you have to go through colleges? Do you have to go through, companies? How do you actually get to this, right? Which will allow you to attract more customers, right? So there are a lot of moving parts in this, right? Sometimes the channel could be an issue. Sometimes the pricing could be an issue. Sometimes the marketing and the positioning could be an issue. And then the last question, which we already talked about, is it actually spreading, right? People who are using your product, are they actually liking it and recommending it to others? Because what happens when you have a customer who is liking and recommending your product? How many of you recommend products to your friends, family, or coworkers? Okay. Can one of you give an example of a product you recommend?
Doctors,
Sorry?
physicians, doctors whom we visit.
Okay, you recommend a physician. Okay, so that's a service. And how many of the physicians do you recommend of the ones that you've seen all your life?
How many did I recommend?
Yeah.
4, 5 probably.
And how many would you have seen over your life?
They are the ones whom I encountered and use their services for that matter. And I like them. So
How many?
The service and
Out of maybe how many?
4 out of 400 or 40 or
how many doctors?
Lost count, right?
What to your point, Amazon, Swiggy, all of that.
So, correct. So in general, as people, we do not go around recommending products and services to people unless we really had a great experience, right? So it's a high bar. How many times will you complain about a product or a service? The moment it happens. You have a bad experience, you will surely complain. But for you to go out and recommend a product, it's a high bar, right? You must have had a really great experience, whether with a doctor or a product or a service, to go out and recommend it, because you don't want to waste your breath. If it's okay, you will rarely talk about it. So keep in mind, the last part is really important. That means, Sometimes people talk of it as customer service, customer experience, wow effect, customer delight. But the idea is that, there should be a set of people who really stand by your product and who are actually willing to open their mouth and tell others, right? So this can be a high bar. Yeah. Now, why this is important is twofold. One is, just like the value loop we talked about, there is a similarly growth loop, right? One part of it is the available market size. Right? Like, so is there actually enough money out there? And then the second is, can you get there? Right? Do you actually have a way to access it? Can you reach those customers? Can you market to them? Can you sell them? Can you service them? And so on. And sometimes this will also take some amount of experiment and a learning loop, right? And the things you are experimenting with are, typically in broad buckets, the target segment, right? Are you selling to people with low income? Are you selling to people with middle income? Are you selling early career? Are you selling mature career? Are you selling students? Who are you selling to? Or location. What is the pricing and position? Are you saying that, hey, you do my course and you'll get a job. You do my course and you get a promotion, or you'll be able to do your job better. What happens? Or you will, ace the test and you will get admission, right? So depending on what kind of customers you are targeting, or it could be, hey, if you're selling B2B, in your organization's productivity will improve or performance will improve, right? So it may depend on the kind of companies and kind of customers you're targeting. And then there is a pricing and positioning combination, right? So is it something which is priced in hundreds? Is it priced in thousands? Is it priced in lakhs? Is it priced in tens of lakhs, right? That and how people perceive you, the combination will matter. And again, there is some amount of learning to be done here, in a sort of experimentation or scientific approach, where I don't like to think of it as trial and error. I like to think of it as, what is it that you know for sure and what is it that you are unsure, which you are testing, right? So if you think that, okay, people in cities will buy my product, then, have you tested it out in 2 cities before you start selling it in 10 cities, right? If you think, people who have 2 to 5 years experience will buy my product, then, how many of those people have you talked to and tried to see and get their feedback on whether this is useful for them, right? So it is in the context of the kind of customers you want to target. And then, of course, do they, are they willing to pay the price? Are they able to pay the price? All those aspects. And how are you reaching? Can you just sell this on the web, or do you need to sell door to door, or you need to sell at events? Some of the things that we earlier talked about, right? So this combination is what is important, and it may take some iterations before you get there. And once you find it, then of course you pump it. Right? That means you do more of it. And another way to look at it is, similar to how we talked about the value hypothesis, is to look at a set of potential experiments, right? Based on what you understand, what more you need to do. Testing your campaigns and outreach by channel, by type of segments, price point, geography, pricing and positioning combinations. And some of this can be done by actually working with actual customers, potential customers. Some of it can be done by talking, right? So suppose you're going to try a new segment, clearly don't want to necessarily launch a product in that. You will probably have some interviews, discovery calls, meetings before you do that. And then sometimes you may actually be assessing the way you are pitching to them, right? What is it that customers care about? Is your messaging actually echoing that? Is it offering the kind of benefits they are looking for, right? So this combination is something you would understand from your business. You would understand what are your customers looking for. And if you're unsure, you want to test and learn. Yeah. Okay. I'll just take a pause here. Any thoughts, comments, questions on this before we move forward? Anything we've discussed so far?
I think it move ahead.
Okay.
I just wanted one question.
Yes, please.
In the second part, the growth part,
Yes.
is the word profit also somewhere?
Yes. We will. Correct. Yeah.
Or a break-even point?
Yeah. So I have not put down all the financial metrics associated with growth. Right now, we've just focused on the revenue or the top line growth. But certainly, if you are not able to hit profitable growth, also you will have problems. Right? And you see a lot of startups who have raised huge amounts of funding have failed on the profitability line, right? So they've had revenue growth, because they've been pumping in more money and they've been able to raise more capital, but they, profitability is nowhere in sight. So very, very good point. And certainly profitability should be in sight. And I'll show you kind of one more slide which should highlight that. But before we do that, I just have a quick question. How many of you drink tea or coffee? Yeah. Okay, great. Almost everyone. Good. So on the left side, I think my left side, maybe I don't know if it's your left side or right side, you see the roadside thele wala. How much will you typically pay for tea or coffee there?
10 rupees.
10 rupees. Okay, perfect. Next to that is a regular restaurant. Here also they offer tea coffee. How much will you pay for it typically? 50 rupees. Okay. And what do you see on the third picture? Fancy
Starbucks.
coffee shop. Starbucks. How much do you pay for coffee here?
375.
Ah. Okay.
We were told we paid $20 a month.
So it's not how much will be charged here.
Correct. So what do you think is the difference, right? Everyone is selling tea or coffee, but there is so much difference in price. Starbucks is charging 30 times.
Roadside tea wala.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again, please.
I said I would pay much more for the roadside chai shop than I'll pay for chai in a fancy coffee shop.
In other words, you won't go to the fancy. Pay zero.
I'll go to the fancy coffee shop to have fancy coffee.
Okay.
Here, probably positioning really does matter. What I mean to say is that whether you're at the airport or at the road, probably that will do matter.
Of course.
Ideally.
Of course. Yes. Right.
And that will be the compulsion point.
Yes.
It will take you from their perception of what cost you have of giving you that service, or what
Correct.
cost they incurred in giving you that service, to make an assumption on what the utility they're getting or what you ought to pay.
Or depending on who you're taking along with you.
Yes.
That is a totally different
That person.
Okay.
There are many
So-
angles here.
and what you want
Absolutely.
to them to
Correct.
do.
Right. So one of the things I will latch on to is perception. Right. So in addition to who you are going with, right? So it's not necessarily true that the cost of the product is 30 times, it is certainly higher, but the customer perception matters, right? So positioning is not necessarily what you are saying about the product, but it's what customers perceive it to be, right? If they consider you to be a premium product, premium experience, they will pay much more. If they consider you to be a regular product and experience, they will pay a certain amount. If they consider you to be just a convenience, right? So if it's a roadside convenience, it's 10 rupees, but the same convenience in an airport is 200 rupees, right? So it may depend on the timing, location, and of course the positioning, because the perception will drive, the perception of value will drive what people are willing to pay for, right? Not just the cost. The cost is certainly a factor, but the perceived value is what will matter.
Kaustubh, this is
Yes.
Abhishek.
Yes.
Sorry, if just wanted to ask you, this is a rare segment that the same customer could potentially use all three products? Because
Yes.
because otherwise, then the product you're creating is only for a particular segment, right? Then it's not about paying or not paying, it's about then the share of wallet for someone who enters a Starbucks.
Right.
375 rupee coffee is equivalent to for someone who goes to the roadside, that 10 rupee coffee, right? So then it's
Correct.
is it just this category? Though it's a very good example, it's a fantastic example, because as customers we may be traversing all three of them. But
Correct.
is there some learning for us when we create products?
Yeah.
I think, it is basically why same company go with a different brand set. So one for the higher customer, one for the lower middle, and a third one is to the masses, for the masses, where they will advertise only for the first brand, highest value. So as the perceived value is high, and they will sell the mass product.
But Abhishek, we are uniquely positioned B2B We provide the same product without changing anything at different prices to different customers.
That's what you should change, right?
Gaining strength. I had a very interesting experience. So, I mean, last year we were only selling in India, and in India, of course, everybody, how much you want, price. So you kind of start to think, are you overpriced? And you're very conservative on price. The start of this year, we launched a US site. Everything same product, same everything. Just the pictures we changed. And so again, being Indians, you're always scared about price. So we kind of just increased by 25%. We got our first customer, didn't even talk about price. Whatever was published on the website, they paid us. So then we kind of thought, oh, are we underselling ourselves? So then I pretty much doubled the price. Second customer also I got, didn't even talk about the price. Whatever we published on the website, we got it. And that really got us thinking. I mean, as Indians, I mean, it's a cultural thing because we get hammered on the head so much on pricing. I think we kind of undersell ourselves because the same product is US. Nobody even asked the
That's why your cost structure is low.
So I work with so Russian, they burn roughly 7 billion rupees here in India. So after 5 years, they realized it is very tough to make money in India. That was the thing. So people don't spend that very easy.
Value
So,
bias. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think,
yeah. So I
there
think
is-
this.
Sorry, go ahead. I can tell you offline my theory about this.
So I think, thanks for all of you adding, it highlights 2 points, right? One is sometimes is the same customer, right? The value perception is different. When I buy the chai at the roadside, I will not pay more than 10-15 rupees. So part of it is perception, part of it is the experience and the actual product, right? So that's a combination of all. But that same customer for a different experience, different product, different service may be willing to pay more. Right? Like Abhishek highlighted, I might be actually visiting all three of these. I may buy the 10 rupee chai on the roadside. I will buy the 40 rupee chai in a restaurant, and I will also pay for the 300-400 rupees chai coffee in Starbucks. So the same customer may be willing, and they may have a different perception of the brand and the service. Should the same company be offering products and services across the segments? Yes, it can happen. You will see it with consumer goods. Right? So you will see the shampoo sachet for 1 or 2 rupees selling on the roadside convenience store, Kirana store. That same shampoo packet in a bigger chunk is sold at 50-100 rupees, and sometimes they may have a slightly fancier version selling at few hundred rupees. So certain consumer goods companies are able to do it. Doesn't mean everybody does it. So it requires a systematic thought process and approach to how you are doing it and what you are doing it and whether you are doing it. But excellent points here. And the example that someone gave in the corner about, hey, I charge double, triple, and much more in a more, in a more developed economy, and people were still willing to pay, is an excellent point. Sometimes the same product or service can be sold for much more, just because the customer has the money and the budget, right? And there's nothing wrong in doing that. Sometimes people, what they're willing to pay is a function of how much money they have. Yeah. Oh, good. Now, briefly, I want to talk about, how do you actually track it? These are some of the standard metrics. Some of you may be already tracking some metrics like that. This is not a comprehensive list. NPS score, net promoter score. Do people like it, right? Like you will see after you book a ticket, there'll be on Make My Trip or Yatra, they'll send you a survey, right? On 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, did you like the experience such that you will recommend it or refer it? Right? That's your NPS score. Obviously, many of you will be talking if your customers, you're offering something which customers can renew, then are they coming back to you, right? How much are you growing? Are you signing up customers faster than you were the last month, last quarter, last year? And then, of course, share of market. Right? So these are sort of high-level metrics which you could track. There are, of course, qualitative metrics. In general, I would look at it as, are others talking about you? Are your customers talking about you? Is the media talking about you without paying them? Are analysts, potential investors talking about it? These can be some qualitative tests. But in general, when your reputation is spreading without you having to do much, then you are in a good place, right? That's another way to look at it. And, I think earlier there was the question on, is profitability somewhere in the works, right? Or on the horizon, and this is not really talking about profitability, but one way I like to think of it is, are you breaking the linearity, right? And if you see these graphs, on the y-axis is the revenue, on the x-axis is the spend, right? So to earn a rupee, how much do I have to spend? And do I have to keep, spending the same ratio, right? So if I have to spend a rupee to earn a rupee, I'm never going to be profitable. If I have to spend 2 rupees to earn 1 rupee, then, either I should be raising a lot of funds or eventually I'm going to shut down. For startups which hit product market fit, you see a non-linear growth, right? So I don't need to keep spending more in order to get more revenue, or I need to spend, obviously, for companies which are growing, the sales and marketing spend will continue. It's not like you can stop it, but you are growing at a rate faster than you're spending. So if you are able to do that, then of course you hit profitability, you hit the kind of growth which is sustainable and profitable over the long run, right? This is kind of my view of it. And of course, in practice, the chart will not start at 0, 0. You will have to spend some money before you can make money. But outside of that, this kind of shows one way to assess whether you have product market. One second. Now, I think hopefully that gives all of you some sense of what is product market fit. We talked about the value hypothesis, the growth hypothesis, how to test it, the kind of role pricing and positioning play in the way you get to product market fit. And some of the lessons that I have learned over the years are focus on the pain, not the solution, right? So if you understand your potential or actual customer's pain and come up with a way to address it, then you are on the right path, right? Sometimes, and it's very possible to do it, especially for people who are creating product, and I'm one of them, you get attached to the product or the solution that you create, right? And you say that, okay, maybe the customer doesn't understand it. Maybe it's not the right time, right? And those could be true factors. But if you get attached to what you have created, you're not necessarily responding to what the market needs, right? So if you have to be attached to the pain or the problem rather than the product or the solution which you are creating, right? You already talked about the, urgent and high value pain, right? Is it a headache? Is it a flood in the kitchen? Is the situation similar to that for that target segment? If it is, then, you are going to be able to sell it. And then, of course, the other is more of a mindset, continuous learning and evolving. There isn't a perfect approach to this. Obviously, there is some aspect of scientific approach and experimentation and testing. And some of it is, of course, your understanding of the market and the judgment and intuition you develop as part of that process. So I think of it as an art and a science both. But you have to keep the mindset of learning and iterate, right? And one of the other things I found in practice, sometimes you will see that a few customers adopt it, right? So those are your early adopters. So that means they like the product. There are a lot of people who are willing to try any new product in the market, or it's a small enough set. But that small enough set doesn't necessarily prove that you have a large enough or a mass or a much bigger market, right? So sometimes you will see startups get early traction, but that doesn't necessarily translate into long-term, sustainable, profitable growth, right? So it's just something to be aware of, in terms of how you look at it. Any of you familiar with these people here? Noddy. And who's the guy next to Noddy?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Okay. Do you know the chap on the right? Have any of you seen Lord of the Rings movies? No.
On his faces of a failed startup.
Okay. So the guy next to Noddy is called Big Ears, right? Big Ears is kind of his advisor, right? He has big ears, right? the guy on the other picture also has big pointy ears. Right. One of the things that helps is to have big ears. Right. Why do you need big ears?
Listen to your customers.
Yes, we are very smart people at this. So I think this is really important. And sometimes we are hearing them out. We're gathering the feedback, we're talking to customers, we're all doing the right things, but we're not listening. Because sometimes customers may not be able to articulate the problem. They may not be able to articulate the need in a manner in which we can understand. Right. So it pays to listen, to try to decipher what customers are saying and see if that helps. I would say that's perhaps the biggest secret, open secret, what it takes to get there. Yeah. Okay. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those. My contact information is on there. I will just pause here, see if you have
Let's
any
have some
thoughts, questions.
practical questions. I'm sure now I think this generally is understandable. The practical questions
Yes.
that people have, what you attempted, you're missing it. That may be very relevant at this point for.
This is Ramana. I'm a co-founder at ProdZen. It's an
Okay.
B2B EdTech company. The
Okay.
question I have is, we are on a journey where we already created a product and we're going forward. Are there any techniques that are there in vogue that we can employ so that we can, because product is something which has its own journey. It's not a finished product ever, right? So are there any strategies that you would suggest to us where we can employ them as a technique, right? To improvise, improve, and, see that it's more relevant and help us in growth, essentially.
Sure. So, given that you are B2B and you already have some customers, obviously customer feedback, both kind of verbal, qualitative feedback, and any kind of, if your technology solution allows you to gather any usage metrics, right, or engagement metrics, those would be two ways in which you can learn, right? Whether, even if you're offering an overall product, what portion of that product is actually being used or adopted or engaged with is something very useful that can highlight, because often what happens is when in many of the B2B products, certain aspects of the products get utilized and others are not, right? And for the customer or the buyer, the overall solution is important, but the individual users who are interacting with the product may have a different opinion, right? So sometimes that's difficult to decipher. So tracking those metrics will help. In addition to that, if you have similar competition or adjacent competition, understanding what they are doing and how they are evolving helps. And the third thing is obviously the case studies, right? So where you are able to actually highlight how some of these B2B customers are actually gaining value. And if they're able to vouch for it, then those would be things which will allow you to grow. I mean, this is a very quick answer, obviously it's a longer discussion, but hopefully these 2-3 things kind of, offer you something of a pointer in terms of how you can consider.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, this is Abhishek from MBA Track. We are a program as a service company, so we build programs for EdTech companies, higher education institution and companies. Interesting, my co-founder just stepped out of the room, so I'll say it with all fun. We are a service-based company, a solutions-based company. We use a lot of products. But one of the biggest challenges we both have as co-founders is, my co-founder comes from product-based background. I come from a service-based background. Because we both worked in corporates. Our biggest debate or hottest debate is, over a period of time, should our services or solutions get productized or not? Right? Because we keep doing custom dev or keep iterating the solution. And we have multiple solutions available, right? So do you have, I know it's not a magic pill or a single answer, but is there a framework or a thought process there where you eventually say as a services company, we need to stop doing services and become a product company? And I guess a lot of Indian IT services companies are facing this question as well,
and
right?
I think good question. And yes, we see this all the time. In fact, a lot of the startups which appear to be product startups from the outside are services startups, right? So they are primarily providing a service. Obviously there is an underlying some amount of platform or product build, but they are doing a lot of services. So bulk of the value is coming from services. And, part of it is an identity question. Do you want to be a product company versus do you want to be a services company? Because both are good business models, right? The potential advantage of being a product company is if you get your product right and you actually get to product market fit, the multiplication is much faster, right? So whereas with services, even though you may have some reusable widgets or code or capabilities, you will be doing custom build, right? So the rate at which you grow is more a function of the scale at which you can build your people operations. So if you can, go from 10 people to 100 to 1,000, look at the TCS Infosys of the world, right? Those are people operations. If you can build large organizations at scale and find those people, train them, skill them, and have the leadership to manage them, then you can build a great billion-dollar services business also. And then you look at others who are product businesses. I don't think one is better than the other. Part of it is your identity. And that's why perhaps the debate with your founder, who comes from the product background. So part of it is you may have to choose an identity or your inclination. And then the rest is to actually assess whether there is a product opportunity, right? Because in some cases, what people require is always a custom solution, right? But in some cases, you have a product opportunity because it's not like customization will go away, but roughly people need the same or similar things, right? So if that is the case, you perhaps have a product opportunity, and I'm here talking in generics, not specific. So without understanding what your situation is, but if that opportunity exists where the same thing or roughly the same thing can be sold or offered to many people, then perhaps there is a product opportunity. Then I would look at whether you can build it and how to reposition and so on. But yes, we've actually seen this with many companies, and sometimes people who come from a very services background, have a tough time transitioning to product, because part of being a product company is also saying no, right? That we don't want to do this. But a services company rarely says no, right? Because saying yes to customer means more money. So that also will come. And we've seen this. We've worked with, not just the startups, but we work with services companies. So part of it is a mindset or an identity question. And then the rest is, is the opportunity large enough for you to actually product this? But it's difficult to have the same team work on services and products simultaneously. That much I can tell you from experience.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's very.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm Samir, and an EdTech company serving multiple of those particular customers in corporate as well as in higher education as such. What is the nirvana for this particular product management for a B2B company?
I don't know if there is nirvana. The nirvana could be an IPO or an exit or
No. What I
fundraise.
mean to say, I'm really talking from the point of view of product management of a platform or a overall product management with respect to the product.
Yeah.
What is the stage where you do say a quick example is that Microsoft Word, Excel, the versions really kept on coming, but actual engine and its particular PMF really never change, right? So that is really been a stage where unless something drastically change the whole market or the underlying technology, then you really have to bring in a altogether new product. So what is that?
No, a very good question. And I appreciate you sharing the Microsoft example, right? Because essentially there hasn't been a better tool. Right? So Google Office came around, but it didn't really displace it because people are entrenched. They're already used to it. Nobody wants to spend their time learning another word. It's not like people are not using Google Word doc sheets, and there are advantages to it, but it's not big enough, right? Because people are already used to it. Right? So very few products get to that kind of adoption. But if you ask the question on the product management nirvana, certainly few products enjoy that over a long period of time. Most products over a period of time become obsolete because the market has changed, the needs have changed. So even if you can stay for 10, 20 years in today's world, that's long enough. If you can go beyond it, then, wonderful. But even if you can last there for 10 years, and then either you evolve the product or come up with new products, right? So sometimes you will see companies cannibalizing their own products. They will create a competitor to their existing product, right? So I worked at Oracle. This was routine, right? They were always buying or creating products which got rid of the old products. So it depends on the company, it depends on your approach, but it could be long time sustenance, or you create new products which replace your own old products. That can also be an approach where you think of end of life and replacement as an approach. So I think hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Not nirvana, but just practice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And possibility last question, one more. Because
Yes,
we really brought in all together as the technology, underlying technology, we really thought is really not really good, and we really wanted to have a better UX and UI.
Hmm.
We really shifted this completely on a new technology platform.
Okay.
And the product is really going awesome. The earlier product is really going awesome. For this particular kind of a change, the feature and everything has really remained same, but the look has really drastically changed, resonating what the current world really requires. Okay.
Right.
In this kind of a situation, or whenever you're really adding a new feature or modifying a existing feature, should we really still do go for those particular tests of PMF? I mean the theoretical test, not the customer ones.
Yeah, no, I think we don't need to have a theoretical test, but customer testing should be required. Oftentimes, people don't like change. So you need to sell the change. If it's drastically changing experience, capabilities, feature, pricing, positioning, you want to ease into it and you want to seek customer feedback before you push it out. Because sometimes I see this in practice where a newer version is better, either because the tech stack has improved or the experience or some combination. But customers who are already on the old product are liking it and are comfortable with it, so they are resistant to change, right? So even if you come out with a version which you think is better, you will need to still sell it to customers so that they will actually adopt it. So just be mindful of that. In fact, sometimes I see companies saying that, okay, old customers stay on the old product, new customers go to the new product, but over a period of time, they will only sell the new product and then kind of push the old product to be end of life so that customers have to move out of it. So you'll see large companies, eventually have to force the hand of customers. So, it kind of depends on the situation, but just keep in mind that you need to at least do the customer testing and selling every time you come up with something materially different. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. I think we are out of time.
No, if there's one or two questions, I think
Sure.
I'll let you go. If you can be there, if anybody has a question.
Yeah, I'm happy to take more questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I have a question. This is Ashish. While you are building a product, there's generally a thin line between the product and you convert it into customized way. When every time customer asks you to do customization, some customization you choose to do because it's for everybody. There are some customization which are very specific. You lose the deal or make the deal, whatever it is. What do you define that product and service between the thin line? How do we, as a founder, keep a track on that?
Yeah. No, excellent question. And it's a tough question because, when you are in the early days, every rupee or dollar counts, right? So you don't want to say no to any revenue. And I get that, right? However, if, similar to the question Abhishek asked earlier, right? At what stage do you foresee that you will multiply, right? Is there an opportunity? And, if you think there is an opportunity or you see the opportunity where not offering certain customizations will actually help you move faster, then I would consider taking that up, right? So this is a very generic answer, difficult to answer it without knowing the specifics. But if you see a much faster multiplication opportunity, not only will you be able to have higher margin business, typically product businesses, have 90% plus margins, right? Services business can, if they go over 50, 55, that stops, right? So that's the opportunity in terms of how you build it. But of course, different kind of skill is required. And part of building a product business is from time to time being able to say no, right? And it's not like no, go away. It's no, why, qualified no, explained no, doesn't fit in, how we could offer. And a lot of companies I see can also take the track where they distinguish their product from their services, right? This is part of the core product. And services may be offered by either partners or a professional services arm or something like that, depending on your size and scale. But they don't want to be in the maintenance of that service code or service capability. So those are possible strategies you can consider. Either bring in a partner if you're big enough, have a services arm, so that you don't necessarily own the responsibility of supporting the customized product for a long duration, and that is handed off to someone else. So those are possible ways to consider.
If you allow just
Go
extend
ahead.
it. So to become specific, like what I ask is a very generic line. Why I've asked this question is there is a reason for it. So we are a upskilling company, right? We are outcome-based learning focused, where we focus on employment at the end or at the beginning of the program. That's what is vertically met. So when we were doing the demand-led working with industry and customers, when we were giving this solution for skilling, and they were giving the manpower which is skilled and productive from day 0 or day 15 of their joining, their side of operations were very manual. Our side of operations were sourcing, screening, etc. is automated, but their side of operation were manual or very cumbersome to handle. And because of that, our cycle was getting completely extended. So, but when we discussed that, okay, why we are getting that delayed when we did finish everything. So then we started talking to customer, came to know their problems, and their side of thing also we built it up. Now, what we started doing, we started showing that to customer as a value add.
Correct.
Now that got built up, and those customer adopted in a pilot mode or whatever it is. Then we thought, hey, this looks like everybody's problem. So then we taken out as a product out, and now giving that as a service that, okay, if you're doing with somebody else also, use my product, do it. So maybe you are doing it for, say, 5 job role with me, you are doing 50 with others, you use the same product to do that because they started asking for it. So it came out like a product now. Now, if I take that as a product to market, that's a separate approach we should be taking as a SaaS or whatever we call it. Now, there's a dilemma that, okay, we did that, but whether should we go for an open market or not, or we should continue to exist and service only our customer and charge for it.
Right.
That is something my question.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, couple of tests I would apply is, one is the size, right? Like, I think which in part you have validated that, most customers of this type will need this added service or product, right? If that is the case, I would certainly look at productizing. Second aspect I would look at it is, is it economically viable for you to be able to do this, right? So is it actually repeatable where, you are reusing the effort, code or capability, 80-90% of the time, in terms of what you have done. If those two tests match, then certainly it can be an add-on offering, right? It need not be part of the course. It need not be bundled with your core product. It could be an add-on. And you will see several companies doing this, right? Like, hey, you want, extra special service, premium service, hey, this is extra. You want the onboarding adoption service, you want the complete cycle service, that's extra. So I would look at offering that as a value-added product or an add-on or an upsell. That can also be a strategy.
So the first is sourcing, screening, skilling, and deployment. So sourcing, screening, we were not charging to customers. Now there's an opportunity when we are talking to them. In fact, they're saying, yes, we are ready to pay for because we are using it. It's good. So I'm assuming that is how.
Yeah. So, I mean, every time, whenever you are offering a solution to a particular pain or a problem, you will also learn about adjacent problems, right? So in this case, you described it as like a 4-step, right? So maybe you're automating 2 and now customer is coming to you for 1 and 3 or 1 and 4 and so on. And it's okay to start building additional products or capabilities there. As long as you are sure that, or at least you assess that it's repeatable, right? Because then whatever you're investing in terms of building the product, then you can seek to multiply. But this is a very common strategy for growth, right? You pick up adjacent problems because you already understand the problem. You already have a relationship with the customer. They are willing to tell you. And that's the classic services mining model, right? You can apply the mining concept even to product, right? Because you're learning adjacent problems and you know how to solve them. That's a fair strategy.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
Anyone? Okay, so I think this is great. I'm sure this could go on, but I think for the moment we've raised enough questions. for this session and
Sure.
given time. So thanks so much. And if someone want to thank him formally among our student community.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure it's been a very valuable session for each one of us. Let's have a huge round of applause for sir, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you got something useful out of it. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.